The Volanthi had never known war. In all their 12,000 years of traveling between the stars, they had never fired a weapon, never raised a hand in anger, never watched their own kind die in battle. Their homeworld, Sereni's Prime, was a place of gentle winds and soft sunlight, where the forest grew tall and peaceful, and the most dangerous creature was no bigger than a house cat. The Volanthi themselves were beautiful in a delicate way. Their bodies were thin and graceful, with skin that glowed faintly in soft blues and greens depending on their mood. They had 4 slender arms and large eyes that could see colors no other species could imagine. They were scientists, artists, philosophers. They wrote poetry that made other species weep. They composed music that was said to heal the soul, but they could not fight. They had never needed to dot now, as Ambassador Thalia stood in the communications center of the capital city, watching the dark shapes of enemy warships block out the stars above his world. He understood that their peaceful nature might be the death of them all. The Krath had come without warning. One day, the skies of Sereni's Prime were clear and calm. The next, they were filled with the massive, ugly ships of the Krath Dominion. The Krath were conquerors. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted, enslaving those who survived, and destroying those who resisted. The Volanthi had tried to talk. They had sent messages of peace, offers of friendship, promises of trade and cooperation. The Krath had responded by destroying the 3 small patrol ships that made up the entire Volanthi defensive fleet. The battle, if it could be called that, had lasted less than 2 minutes. Now, the Krath commander had sent a simple message: surrender in 3 days, or watch your world burn. Thelios looked at the faces around him. His people were afraid. Their skin flickered with the pale gray color of fear and despair. Children held on to their parents. Elderly Volanthi who had lived for centuries stared at the sky with eyes that had never seen such horror. "We must call for help," said Coordinator Yeneth, her voice shaking. She was old, one of the oldest of their kind, and she had spent her long life believing that the universe was fundamentally good. That belief was dying in her eyes. The Galactic Council. The Mutual Defense Compact. We signed it. We are owed protection. Thelios nodded slowly. The compact was an agreement between dozens of species. If any member world was attacked, the others would come to help. It had existed for hundreds of years, though it had rarely been needed. The galaxy was, for the most part, peaceful, but the Krath did not care about peace. Thelios walked to the transmission array, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. He had never felt so tired. He had never felt so old. He was only 200 years old. Still young by Volanthi standards, but in this moment, he felt ancient Dot. He activated the array and spoke the words he had never imagined saying. "This is Ambassador Thelios of Sereni's Prime. I am invoking Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Compact. Our world is under attack by the Krath Dominion. Our fleet is destroyed. Our people are defenseless. We have been given 3 days to surrender. After that, they will kill us all. Please, if anyone can hear this message, send help, send soldiers, send anyone. We are begging you." He ended the transmission and stood in silence. Around him, his people watched and waited. The gray of their skin seemed to grow darker with each passing moment. The response came faster than Thelios had expected. Within an hour, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. He read it 3 times, certain he had misunderstood. 1 ship. They were sending 1 ship. The vessel was called the Defiant Star, a human frigate from the Sol system. It carried 243 personnel. That was all. 243 soldiers against a Krath invasion force of 50,000. "This cannot be right," Yeneth said, reading the message over his shoulder. "This must be a mistake. Or a cruel joke." Thelios said nothing. He knew about humans, though he had never met one. Every species in the galaxy knew about humans, even if most had never seen them in person. They came from a world called Earth, a planet so dangerous that most other species could not survive on its surface for more than a few hours. Earth had crushing gravity, nearly twice what the Volanthi could tolerate. It had extreme temperatures, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. It had massive storms that could level cities. It had diseases that evolved so quickly that they could adapt to any cure. And it had predators. Thousands of species of predators, from tiny venomous insects to enormous hunting animals with teeth and claws. The humans had not just survived on this nightmare world. They had thrived. They had conquered it. They had spread across its surface, built cities, created civilizations, and eventually reached out into the stars. The rest of the galaxy had a name for them. They called them Deathworlders. But what could 200 Deathworlders do against 50,000 Krath soldiers? The Krath were not weak. They were large, armored beings with hard shells and powerful claws. They had fought and won countless wars. They had conquered dozens of worlds. Thelius looked at his people, at their frightened faces, at the children who did not understand why the sky had grown dark. He did not know if the humans could help. He did not know if anyone could help, but he knew that he would not give up. He would not surrender his people to slavery and death without a fight, even if that fight was hopeless. He turned back to the communication array and sent a reply to the Galactic Council, accepting the reinforcement they had offered. He thanked them for the help, even though it seemed like a death sentence. He did everything that protocol demanded. And then he walked outside, into the cool evening air of Serenis Prime, and looked up at the enemy ships that hung above his world like a promise of death. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, he could no longer see. A single human ship was coming. Thelius did not know if it would arrive in time. He did not know if it would make any difference at all. But for the first time since the Krath had appeared in his sky, he felt something other than fear. He felt a tiny spark of hope. It was not much. It was almost nothing, but it was all he had, and he held onto it with all four of his trembling hands. The humans were coming. He just hoped they were everything the stories said they were. Commander Daniel Russo had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in 3 wars on distant planets, negotiated with alien species who wanted to kill him, and once spent 2 weeks lost in a jungle on a colony world with nothing but a knife and his wits. He thought he had seen everything, but standing on the bridge of the Defiant Star, watching the tactical display light up with enemy contacts, he realized he had never seen anything quite like this. "Give me the numbers again," he said, his voice calm and steady. Lieutenant Maria Santos worked the controls with quick, practiced hands. The holographic display in the center of the bridge flickered and changed, showing the full scope of the Krath invasion force. 12 dreadnoughts, she said. 38 cruisers. 200 support vessels of various sizes. Ground forces estimated at 50,000 soldiers, plus armored vehicles and air support. Russo nodded slowly. He was 42 years old, with gray beginning to show at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. He had a face that was not handsome but was memorable, the kind of face that men would follow into battle and women would trust with their secrets. "And we have?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. 243 personnel. 1 frigate. Standard weapons loadout. The bridge was silent. Everyone knew the odds. Everyone understood what they were flying into. Sergeant First Class Kevin Dunn stepped forward. He was a large man, 6'4", and built like a wall. He had played football in college before joining the military, and he still moved with the easy confidence of an athlete. His hands were the size of dinner plates, and there was a scar running down the left side of his face from a fight on a mining colony 3 years ago. "Sir," he said, The Marines are ready. Whatever you need, we'll do it." Russo turned to look at his people. They were young, most of them. The oldest was Dr. Patricia Holloway, the ship's chief medical officer, who was 53 and had seen more combat wounds than she cared to remember. The youngest was Private First Class Amy Tran, who was 22 and had a smile that could light up a room and fists that could break bones. They were all watching him, waiting for him to say something, waiting for him to tell them that everything would be okay, that he could not do that. He would not lie to them. "I'm not going to pretend this is going to be easy," he said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "The Krath outnumber us 200 to 1. They have bigger ships, more soldiers, and they've been conquering worlds since before most of us were born. By every measure that matters, we should not be able to win this fight." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we're not most species. We're from Earth. We come from a world where everything is trying to kill us, all the time, from the moment we're born until the moment we die. We evolved alongside predators that could rip us apart. We survived diseases that should have wiped us out 1,000 times over. We built civilizations in places where the temperature drops below freezing and places where it rises above 100 degrees. We are the children of a death world." He took a step forward, his eyes moving from face to face. "The Krath don't know what that means. They've never met a species like us. They think we're just another target, another weak civilization to conquer and enslave. They have no idea what's coming for them." Sergeant Dunn grinned, a fierce expression that showed his teeth. "Let's teach them, sir." The bridge erupted in cheers and shouts. Russo let them have their moment, let them feel the fire that came from being part of something bigger than themselves. Then he raised his hand, and the noise died down. "We drop into the system in 6 hours. I want everyone ready. Full combat gear, weapons checked and loaded. We're going to make contact with the Volanti government as soon as we arrive. And then we're going to have a conversation with the Krath commander." "A conversation, sir?" Lieutenant Santos asked. Russo smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Yes, we're going to explain to him exactly what kind of mistake he's made. And if he doesn't listen, we're going to show him." The Defiant Star continued its journey through the darkness of space. A single small ship carrying 243 humans toward a battle that everyone said they could not win. In the medical bay, Dr. Holloway prepared her equipment and reviewed the biological data on the Krath species. She noted their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, the things that could kill them quickly and the things that could kill them slowly. She was a healer, trained to save lives. But she was also a human, and humans had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to save lives was to end them. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Dunn ran his Marines through their drills. They practiced close combat, practiced shooting, practiced falling from high places and landing on their feet. They were not the largest soldiers in the galaxy, not the strongest, not the fastest. But they were the most adaptable, the most creative, the most absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. And in her small quarters, Private Tran sharpened her combat knife and thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother had cried when she joined the military. Her father had said he was proud, but she had seen the fear in his eyes. They did not understand why she needed to do this, why she needed to fight. She understood. Somewhere out there, on a beautiful world with gentle winds and soft light, millions of innocent beings were waiting to die. They had done nothing wrong. They had never hurt anyone, and they were going to be destroyed simply because they could not defend themselves. That was not acceptable. Not to her. Not to any of them. The humans were coming, and they were angry. 6 hours later, the Defiant Star dropped out of hyperspace above Serenus Prime. The crash ships turned to face them, weapons charging, ready to destroy this tiny threat before it could become a problem. On the bridge, Commander Russo looked at the enemy fleet and felt no fear. He felt only a cold, hard determination. "Open a channel to the Krath flagship," he said. "Tell them we want to talk." The war for Serenes Prime was about to begin. The meeting was set for a small moon between Serenes Prime and the Krath fleet. It was a dead rock with thin air, freezing temperatures, and no life of any kind. The Krath commander had chosen it because he thought it would give him an advantage. He was wrong. Commander Vrekthis of the Krath Dominion was not a small being. He stood 8 feet tall, with a hard shell covering most of his body and 4 powerful arms ending in sharp claws. His head was dominated by large compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once, and his mouth was filled with grinding mandibles that could crush bone. He had conquered 11 worlds and killed more enemies than he could count. He was wearing a full, environmental suit when he stepped onto the moon's surface. The cold was dangerous to his kind, and the thin air made breathing difficult. His suit protected him from both, keeping him warm and providing the right mixture of gases for his lungs. The human delegation was already waiting for him. Vrekthis stopped walking. He stared. His compound eyes tried to make sense of what they were seeing. There were 3 humans standing on the surface of the moon. They were not wearing environmental suits. They were not wearing breathing masks. One of them, a tall male with gray in his hair, was wearing what appeared to be a simple military uniform with a light jacket over it. The other 2, a large male and a smaller female, were dressed similarly. They should be dead. The temperature on the moon's surface was 40 degrees below zero. The air contained barely enough oxygen to keep a fire burning. And yet the humans stood there, apparently comfortable, as if they were taking a walk in pleasant weather. "Apologies for the informal attire," the gray-haired human said, walking forward with his hand extended. "I'm Commander Daniel Russo of the human vessel Defiant Star. We didn't want to make this more complicated than necessary." Vrekthis did not take the offered hand. He was too busy trying to understand what he was seeing. "You are the reinforcements?" he finally asked. His translator converted his clicking speech into words the humans could understand. 200 soldiers against our armies?" 243, said the female human. She was holding a small device in her hands, looking at it with an expression of mild interest. "I'm Dr. Patricia Holloway, Chief Medical Officer. I've been reading about your species. Fascinating biology." She looked up at him with eyes that showed no fear at all. "Your exoskeleton provides excellent protection against most weapons," she continued. "But your joints are extremely vulnerable to blunt force trauma. A strong enough impact to any of these points," she indicated spots on her own body, "would cause immediate mobility loss. Your respiratory system requires a very specific mixture of gases, and even small changes can cause disorientation or unconsciousness. And you have almost no immune system to speak of." She smiled. It was a friendly smile, the kind a teacher might give a student. "On Earth, we have a common sickness called influenza. It kills about 500,000 humans every year, and we've been fighting it for thousands of years. Our bodies have adapted to it. Yours have not. I wonder what would happen if your soldiers were exposed to it." The translator processed her words. Vrekthis felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt afraid. The large human male, the one with the scar on his face and hands like crushing tools, stepped forward. "I'm Sergeant Kevin Dunn. I lead the Marine Detachment. I've been looking forward to meeting you." His smile was not friendly at all. "The Volanthi are under our protection now," Commander Russo said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I'm giving you one chance to leave this system peacefully. Take your ships, take your soldiers, and go find somewhere else to conquer. Do that, and no one needs to die today." Vrekthis' fear turned to anger. This human was threatening him? This tiny creature from a single ship was telling him to retreat? The Krath had conquered 100 worlds. They had crushed armies 10 times the size of this pitiful force. "You are insane," he said. "We have 50,000 soldiers. You have 200. This is not a negotiation. It is a joke." Russo nodded slowly, as if he had expected this response. "I thought you might say that. Let me tell you something about humans, Commander. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest. We don't have natural armor or claws or any of the things that make your kind so effective in combat." He took a step closer to Vrectis. The craft commander noticed that the human's breath was visible in the cold air. Small clouds of vapor that proved he was really breathing this deadly atmosphere without any protection. "What we have," Russo continued, "is endurance. We can run for hours without stopping. We can survive wounds that would kill most species. We can go without sleep for days when we need to. And we never, ever give up." He smiled again, and this time there was something dark in his eyes. "We also have creativity. We're very good at finding new ways to kill things. It's what we evolved to do. Our ancestors were not the biggest predators on our world, but they became the most dangerous because they learned to use tools, to set traps, to work together in ways that no other species could match." Dr. Holloway looked up from her device. "Did you know that humans invented biological warfare thousands of years ago? We would throw diseased bodies into enemy cities to spread sickness. We poisoned water supplies. We created weapons that could kill millions with a single use." She said this the same way someone might discuss the weather. "We have rules now about using such weapons," Russo said. "Treaties and agreements that prevent us from deploying our most terrible creations. But those rules only apply when we're fighting other humans." He let the implication hang in the air. Vrectis looked at the 3 humans standing before him. They were smaller than him, weaker than him, fewer in number than his forces by a factor of 200. And yet something in his ancient instincts, something that predated thought and reason, was screaming at him to run. "You're bluffing," he said. "You cannot defeat us." "Maybe not," Russo admitted. "Maybe you'll kill every single one of us. But I promise you this, Commander. If you attack Sereni's Prime, if you hurt those people we came here to protect, we will make you pay for every life you take. We will make this the most expensive victory you have ever won." And when word spreads through the galaxy about what happened here, about what it costs to fight humans, every other species you've conquered will start to wonder if maybe they should try fighting back too. He turned and began walking back toward the shuttle that had brought them to the surface. "You have 12 hours to make your decision. Choose wisely." The 3 humans walked away, leaving Vrectis standing alone on the frozen moon, surrounded by his guards, protected by his environmental suit. He had never felt so cold. The craft attacked at dawn. Vrectis had made his decision. He would not be frightened away by 3 humans and their empty threats. He had 50,000 soldiers, 12 dreadnoughts, and the full power of the Dominion behind him. He would crush these Deathworlders and add their skulls to his collection. The first wave of craft troops landed on the outskirts of the Volanti capital city. 5,000 soldiers in heavy armor, supported by tanks and aircraft. They expected to meet no resistance. They expected the humans to run or hide. They were wrong. Sergeant Kevin Dunn watched the enemy landing through his scope from a position 3 miles away. He was lying flat on a rocky ridge, his camouflage suit making him nearly invisible against the stone. Around him, spread across the hills and valleys, 200 human soldiers waited in silence. "They're forming up," Lieutenant Maria Santos said through the communication link. "Standard assault formation. Tanks in front, infantry behind, air support circling above." "Let them come," Dunn replied. "Wait for my signal." The craft began their advance. They moved with confidence, their heavy feet shaking the ground. The Volanti civilians had been evacuated to shelters deep underground, but the aliens still expected some kind of defense. They found nothing. The streets were empty. The buildings were silent. Commander Vrechthis, watching from his flagship in orbit, smiled with his mandibles. They have given up. The humans know they cannot win. He was still smiling when the first explosion erupted in the middle of his forward column. The humans had spent the 12 hours since the meeting on the moon very productively. They had planted explosives throughout the city. They had set up ambush positions in buildings, in sewers, in places the Krath would never think to look. They had turned every street into a kill zone and every building into a fortress. The explosion killed 30 Krath soldiers instantly. Before the survivors could react, gunfire erupted from a dozen different directions. Private First Class Amy Tran was on the front lines. She was small, barely 5'2", with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid and eyes that missed nothing. In the past 3 years, she had trained in 14 different forms of combat and mastered them all. She fired her rifle from a window on the 3rd floor of a residential building, taking down 2 Krath soldiers with precise shots to their vulnerable joint areas. Then she moved, running through the building to a new position before the enemy could locate her. The Krath returned fire, their weapons tearing through the walls of the building. But Tran was already gone, appearing in a new window on the opposite side of the street, firing again, moving again. This was how humans fought. They did not stand and die. They attacked, retreated, attacked again from a new direction. They used the environment as a weapon, turning the Krath's superior numbers into a disadvantage. In the narrow streets and tight spaces of the city, the enemy's tanks could not maneuver, their aircraft could not find targets, and their soldiers could not form the tight formations they were trained to use. Sergeant Dunn led his squad in a direct assault on the Krath command post. They dropped from the sky, falling from a transport at high altitude with nothing but armored suits and small gravity devices to slow their fall at the last moment. The Krath had never seen anything like it. Beings who threw themselves from the sky like living missiles, landing among them and fighting with weapons and fists and whatever else they could find. Don himself killed 11 Krath soldiers in the first 3 minutes of the assault. He was not a subtle man. He used a heavy rifle to destroy the first few, then switched to his sidearm when the rifle overheated. Then used his bare hands when the sidearm ran out of ammunition. The Krath were strong. Their shells were hard. But Dunn knew where to hit, knew how to break joints and crack armor, knew how to turn the enemy's own strength against them. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds by the time his squad secured the command post. But he was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to fall. Meanwhile, Dr. Holloway had established a field hospital in a basement beneath the city. She treated the wounded, human and Volanti alike, with the same care and attention. But she also had another task. She made sure the Krath intercepted communications discussing the biological weapons the humans supposedly had. Weapons that could spread disease through the enemy army. Weapons that could kill thousands with a single deployment. The communications were fake. The humans had no such weapons ready to use. But the Krath did not know that fear spread through the enemy ranks faster than any disease could. Soldiers began refusing orders to advance into human positions. Commanders argued with each other about whether to continue the attack or retreat. The careful discipline of the Krath army began to crack dot by the end of the first day. The humans had lost 23 soldiers. 23 brave men and women who had given their lives to protect people they had never met. The Krath had lost 4,000. Day 2 was worse for the invaders. The humans had learned their patterns, their tactics, their weaknesses. Every Krath advance was met with ambushes and traps. Every attempt to surround the human positions failed when the defenders simply melted away and appeared somewhere else. Corporal Nathan Price, the best sniper in the Marine detachment, Spent 40 hours in a single position without moving, without eating, barely breathing. He killed 67 Krath officers during that time, breaking the enemy's chain of command and leaving their troops confused and leaderless. When the Krath finally located his position and sent a squad to kill him, they found only empty shell casings and a small note written in standard Galactic. "Thanks for playing," it read. "Better luck next time." Amy Tran was wounded on the second day. A Krath soldier managed to hit her with a blade, cutting deep into her left arm. She killed him with her combat knife, then killed 2 more who tried to take advantage of her injury. When her squad finally reached her, she was standing over the bodies of 5 dead Krath, bleeding badly, barely able to stay on her feet. "We need to get you to the hospital," her squad leader said. "Not yet," she replied through gritted teeth. "The fight's not over." She stayed on the line for another 6 hours before blood loss finally forced her to accept medical treatment. By the end of day 2, the humans had lost 41 soldiers. The Krath had lost 12,000. On the morning of the 3rd day, Commander Vrektis sent a message to the Defiant Star. "Enough," he said. "We will talk." Commander Russo read the message and allowed himself a small smile. "Tell him we'll meet in 1 hour," he said. Same place as before. The tide had turned. The Deathworlders had won. The frozen moon was the same as before, but everything else had changed. Commander Vrektis arrived in a damaged shuttle, his environmental suit showing signs of hasty repair. He moved slowly, his legs aching from exhaustion, his compound eyes dim with defeat. He had not slept in 3 days. He had watched his soldiers die by the thousands. He had seen everything he believed about warfare proven wrong. Commander Daniel Russo was waiting for him, standing on the icy surface in the same light jacket he had worn before. He looked tired too, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines on his face. But he stood straight and tall, and there was no defeat in his expression, only quiet, cold determination. "You wish to talk," Russo said. Vrektis nodded slowly. "We will withdraw from this system. The Volanthi will be left in peace. You have my word." "That's a good start," Russo replied. "But we have additional terms." The Krath commander stiffened. "Additional terms? You are in no position to demand anything. You have lost 60 soldiers. Your force is badly wounded. Another day of fighting, and we could still destroy you." Russo smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. "Maybe, but you've already lost 12,000 soldiers. Your commanders are dead or wounded. Your troops are afraid to advance. And every hour you stay here is another hour for word to spread through the galaxy about what happened on Sereni's Prime." He took a step closer to Vrektis. "What do you think will happen when the other species you've conquered hear about this? When they learn that 200 humans held off 50,000 Krath soldiers? When they realize that maybe, just maybe, you're not as invincible as you want them to believe?" Vrektis said nothing. He knew the human was right. The Dominion's power was built on fear. Once that fear began to crack, once the enslaved world started to think about rebellion, everything would fall apart. "These are our terms," Russo continued. "First, you will pay reparations to the Volanthi for the damage caused during your invasion. Ships, supplies, technology, whatever they need to rebuild." Vrektis' mandibles clicked in protest, but he nodded. "Second, you will release all prisoners taken during your previous conquests. Every species, every world, every individual you've enslaved. You will let them go." This was harder. The slaves were valuable. They worked in Krath factories and farms, providing cheap labor that powered the Dominion's economy. But Vrektis looked at the humans standing before him and saw no room for negotiation. He nodded again. "Third, you will sign a non-aggression pact with the Galactic Council. You will agree to never again attack any species that cannot defend itself. If you want to conquer worlds, you will have to find enemies who can actually fight back. And if we refuse? Rectus asked, though he already knew the answer. Russo's eyes grew hard. Then we stopped being polite. Right now, you've met our diplomatic corps. The soldiers who are trained to work with other species, to communicate, to find peaceful solutions. Back on Earth, we have 8 billion more humans. Many of them are not as friendly as we are. He paused to let that sink in. We know where your homeworld is, Commander. We know the routes your supply ships take. We know every weakness in your defenses. If you make us your enemy, if you force us to fight a real war against you, we will not stop until the Krath Dominion is nothing but a memory. Rectus stared at the human for a long moment. He had lived for over 200 years. He had fought in dozens of wars. He had never been afraid of anything until now. I will sign your treaty, he said quietly. The document was prepared within the hour. Rectus placed his claw mark on the agreement, binding the entire Krath Dominion to its terms. Then he returned to his shuttle and flew back to his fleet. Within a day, the Krath ships were gone. The skies of Serenes Prime were clear once more. 3 months later, Ambassador Thelius stood before the Galactic Council. But this time, he was not begging for help. This time, he was announcing a new alliance that would change the galaxy forever. We have signed a mutual defense agreement with the Sol System, he said, his skin glowing with pride. The humans have agreed to provide military training and protection for any council member species that requests it. The chamber erupted in noise. Shocked whispers, excited murmurs, fearful protests. The Volanthi had done the impossible. They had secured an alliance with the Deathworlders. What did you offer them in return? Asked the Torvian delegate, suspicion thick in his voice. Thelius allowed himself a small smile. Friendship. Cultural exchange. And we taught them how to make Serene's tea. In the back of the chamber, Sergeant Kevin Dunn stood in his dress uniform, watching the proceedings. He had been assigned as military advisor to the Volanthi homeworld, a position that would have seemed absurd a few months ago. He took a sip from the delicate cup in his massive hands. The tea was subtle and fragrant, completely unlike anything from Earth. He had grown to love it. Beside him, Corporal Amy Tran reviewed the day's training schedule on her tablet. Her arm was fully healed now, though she would carry the scar for the rest of her life. She considered it a badge of honor. Think the Volanthi will ever be fighters? Dunn asked. Tran thought about it for a moment. No, they're not built for it, and they don't have the instinct. But that's okay. They don't need to be fighters. What do they need to be? They need to be worth fighting for. She looked up at him with a small smile. And they are. They gave us friendship when they had nothing else to offer. They trusted us when they had no reason to. That matters. Dunn nodded slowly. He had spent his whole life as a warrior, trained to fight and kill and win. He had never thought much about why he fought, only how. But being here, seeing what the Volanthi had to offer the galaxy, he was starting to understand. The humans had not come to Serenes Prime because they were ordered to. They had come because it was the right thing to do. Because somewhere in the hearts of these Deathworlders, these survivors of a nightmare planet, was a need to protect those who could not protect themselves. That was what made them dangerous. Not their strength, not their endurance, not their creativity in finding new ways to kill. It was their willingness to fight and die for beings they had never met. Simply because those beings needed help. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. And as word spread about what had happened on Serenes Prime, as other species began to reach out to humanity, as alliances formed and treaties were signed, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. The age of the conquerors was ending. The age of the Deathworlders had begun. Commander Daniel Russo returned to Earth a hero. though he never felt comfortable with the title. He had lost his 61 soldiers on Sereni's Prime, 61 men and women who would never go home. He remembered every single name, but he also remembered the faces of the Volanthi, children who were still alive because of their sacrifice. He remembered the gratitude in Ambassador Thilius's eyes. He remembered the moment when the Krath fleet turned and fled. It had been worth it. All of it. And somewhere in the depths of space, the message was spreading. A warning to every conqueror, every empire, every species that thought power came from fear and violence. The humans are watching, and they are not afraid.